So to begin this video, I just want to take responsibility. Any problems you've had with this game, Rise of the Ronin, were because of me. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Me and TeamNinja have a very close working relationship, and they made every single design philosophy within this game for me, Resident Eccentric. Thank you, and good night. Okay, I'll do a proper review. I actually initially didn't plan on making a review on this game, but in the first hour I genuinely felt electric with getting this and how much I was enjoying it, and how excited I was for what was to come. So I began jotting down notes and recording gameplay. If you solely want to get to the review of the game, skip to this timestamp on screen. Otherwise, stick around for my trademarked rambling. Also, apologies for butchering any pronunciations. It's gonna happen, but I will try my best. For a long time, Japanese game developers thought it was a risk to translate Japan-centric settings into gaming. Especially samurai-focused stories, or general ones set in the past of the country. Even as recent as the PS3, there are so many hidden gems only available in Japan that focus around samurai, including really high-profile developer names nowadays. From Software only in Japan released the samurai-centric Yoshitsune Eoden on the PS2, not caring to localize it in the West. Even games that did get released in the West tended to trim the Japanese names and history. The Sengoku Basara series, which is very similar to the Samurai Warriors games and heavily based around history, but they considered it too Japanese for Western audiences. They assumed that the West would dislike the game if it wasn't just vaguely fantasy or European. So, here in the West, we got the first Sengoku Basara game released, but retitled as Devil Kings, with all historical mentions of real samurai characters being cut and replaced with generic Western aliases. Nobunaga became simply the Devil King, Date Masamune the Azure Dragon, Sanada Yukimura as Scorpio, Takata Shingen as Red Minotaur, and so on. The story was completely remade and simplified. The lore, nonsensical, and even playable characters and levels were cut that were available in Japan on day one, and even the map was changed from Japan to a generic fantasy land. After the release of Devil Kings, the Sengoku Basara series didn't care to translate their games, save for one Fellton from the PS3 with the third game of the series. An even bigger example nowadays are the two Yakuza spin-offs set in historical Japan. Now we have the second one available in the form of a remake, like a Dragon Ishin, set in the end of the Edo period, but there is still an older one, like a Dragon Arrives, set at the very end of the Sengoku period and the very beginning of the Edo period, where you play as the historical character Musashi Miyamoto. And this game still hasn't received any form of Western support. No localizations, no remasters, nothing. But in recent years, here in the West, we have finally proven that we can love and be interested in a historical Japanese setting. Ghost of Tsushima, Sekiro, and I mentioned Like a Dragon Ishin proved that we Westerners can like foreign settings too. Likewise, the mainline Yakuza and Persona's recent boom from cult classic to well-known and beloved shows we can be interested in Japan as a wider concept as well. And recently, we've even gotten re-releases of previously Japan-only games set in feudal Japan. Kamiwaza Way of the Thief being a notable one that I enjoy quite a bit. It was released all the way back in Japan in 2006, but only here in the West in 2022. Now, I don't want to be disingenuous. Of course, there have been games released and made by Japanese studios set in Japan. Samurai Warriors, Genji, Onimusha, etc. But I don't think that's a stretch to say that we're getting more historical Japanese settings in media more than ever, both from Japanese creators and otherwise. Hell, you can go to Walmart and see 13 Assassins by Takashi Miike on the physical media shelf, or hop onto Hulu and see that Shogun is the most popular show right now. Being the setting went very quickly from a small niche of that one hipster guy you're friends with who really loves Kurosawa films and those gory B-movies, to being something in the mainstream. By the way, that guy was me. I am that hipster. The first Criterion films I bought when I was in my late teens were Seven Samurai, Rashomon, Harakiri, Sword of Doom, Onibaba, The Lone Wolf and Cub box set, and the complete Lady Snowblood. I could go on. I need to stop. TeamNinja has been a treasure trove this last decade for Eastern settings being shown to Western audiences. I love them so much. I've gotten the Platinum trophies for Nioh and Wo Long, and I usually don't even care about trophies on PlayStation, but I just enjoy their games that much. They just click for me. They are masters of achieving a simple but fun video game loop. It feels like playing a game made with the design philosophy of the PS2 era of gaming, but with modern hardware. And no, not in a dated way, more in a they're prioritizing fun and action and video gameness over realism or an intense story kind of way. Those of us who got to experience the PS2 when it was new understand what I mean. People tend to mistake Nioh and Wo Long as just being another straightforward Souls-like clone, and I'm not denying that inspiration, but they are closer to a looter ARPG like Diablo, or even the PS2 RPGs like Champions of Norrath and Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, especially in their gameplay loop outside of the combat involving things like loot and equipment and leveling. All this to say, when Rise of the Ronin was announced, to say I was excited would be an understatement. And I can say, now I can play the game for a decent chunk, this is a beautiful game and it genuinely feels tailor-made for me. I mean, so many mechanics I love are in this game. I mean, hell, let's just go down the list. We got faction dynamics and raising and lowering approval, companions and interpersonal relationships and romance, player home customization, reclaiming settlements and having the game world change from your actions, a wide open world that has a love in its design where everything feels hand-placed, a wide array of weapon types as well as a wide array of playstyles. Also, there's an entire mechanic based around finding and petting cats. I will repeat, this game was made for me. The only reason I have a Twitter is because of the damn cat accounts. I'm a cat man, and so is my Ronin. Easily collect the docile cats, but you have to sneak up on those damn mean calico cats to pet them too. I mean, hell, while you're at it, just read a lore book on the history of cats in Japan while you're at it too. Damn, I love this game. To rein it in a bit, not just shout some wee word salad at you, let me focus on some condensed down topics. The gameplay within Rise of the Ronin I would describe as a slightly slower paced and less fantastical Nioh and Wo Long. Brings back the parry focus of Wo Long, but the weapons feel closer to the meaty heaviness of the first Nioh. Likewise, some animations and mechanics are outright repeated, which isn't a bad thing, by the way. From Software is a similar example, tends to have very similar mechanics that carry over from Dark Souls to Bloodborne to Elden Ring. And this is similar. It tends to be for very minor things. Shooting a gun that has the same animation as Nioh, and likewise them dropping from a headshot looks the same. It's not a big deal. This game feels like TeamNinja's own take on the modern open world formula, but with their own gameplay and level design intact. In a way, it's their own Elden Ring. And did it work? Yes, but not exactly the same. And for the first negative note of this video, I don't think the open world is as tight as, say, Elden Ring's. The game is based around an open world that, though it is open, has zones with preset difficulty levels. This is my personal preferred design philosophy of an open world. But also it does require some moments of linear progression to unlock certain ways forward. For instance, pretty early in the game you get a roadblock, in the sense that you need a pass to get into one of the major cities. Another example is having to go around a massive mountain to kill bandits that open up a gate once you've progressed. And this type of design makes for a very good open world. However, where it falls short in my opinion is it has a lot of, how do I say this, a lack of narrative significance? Let me give you an example. When you're first set free into the open world, you can go anywhere you like. But one of the things you're most likely to run into at first is a fleeing merchant who says that the village ahead of him is taken over by bandits. Naturally, being an RPG protagonist, you will probably go there and kill them. And when you do, a transitional cutscene plays where days pass and the village is rebuilt and the common folk return. This in itself is actually really cool. It's awesome to see the game world actually change. Bandit fortifications and scaffoldings are removed, homes are rebuilt and rubble is cleared out. Bandits become less common in the area, etc. What the issue is that when the cutscene ends, there isn't really anything else to it. There's no meeting with the village elder who thanks you, there's no greater significance or story moment. You just walk forward, claim someone's horse without saying anything, and go on your merry way. You can go talk to the merchant who just says, "Oh, thanks, that was cool, here's some shit. Bye." And you get a quest to get some herbs for an alchemist who talk to her. That's it. Now this isn't horrible, but it does suck me out of the world. Admittedly, one of my favorite games is a near identical system, The Witcher 3. It actually has this feature basically beat for beat. Almost every time, no one has anything to say to Dear Geralt. And it's the same here. In Rise of the Ronin, all you get is a meter in regions that show how much the region likes you. And I do like this meter, but I think it needs something more substantial, or at the very least, just for this first cleared settlement to establish the mechanic. Let me meet the people I saved. Let me have some narrative to it. This is an RPG after all. TeamNinja has always been light on story. Playing Nioh and Wo Long sometimes felt like a greatest hits clip show of a 100-episode long historical epic. If I wasn't already familiar with the time periods, I would be completely lost playing them. Ronin, though, prioritizes the story a lot more than the other recent TeamNinja games. And it handles the story and its lore with accessibility and legibility first and foremost. Which is why these lapses in story significant moments of busy work feels strange. There's an idea in open world game design that I subscribe to. The idea is that basing an open world around one or two, maybe three major cities tends to be the best way to do it. Some famous examples are Baldur's Gate in the first game in the titular series, Athkatla in the second, New Vegas in New Vegas, Sigil in Planescape Torment, Novigrad in The Witcher 3, the Imperial City in Oblivion, Grand Sword in Dragon's Dogma, etc. I tend to love the urban sprawl. A bit of an oddity, I think, in that I tend to prefer city-based stories and questing. Even in things like D&D, I tend to focus on cities when DMing as opposed to dungeon crawling. And Rise of the Ronin also takes this idea. Don't get me wrong, the majority of the map is the rural countryside of Japan, but the story is heavily focused on the massive city of Yokohama, notably because it's historically where the influence of the West has been limited to. But to my surprise, going further into the game, there are actually two other massive cities in the game, Edo and Kyoto, that are just as detailed, important, and massive. But Yokohama is where I think the duality of this time period in Japan is best represented. As someone who's less well read in this time period than, say, the Sengoku Jidai, it's surprisingly very accessible and easy to understand, with deep roots in the actual history laid out in a surprisingly understandable way. Before Ronin came out, I had worried that the westernization of this time period in Japan would take away from the magic that I love so much from the other time periods. But I was mistaken. Honestly, I was very badly mistaken. The clash of Western industry against Japanese culture makes for an interesting world that feels almost alien. And no, I don't mean that in the, oh, Japan is so weird, ha ha ha. Actually, it's the Western elements that feel weird and out of place. You have these gorgeous Japanese buildings, feel natural in the landscape, but have been left to ruinate and degrade against the new Western architecture. It clashes so harshly with everything else around it. And seeing the Western soldiers in their trim uniforms feels so... I know how to use the word, but I mean it's the most accurate. It feels so alien. And you can feel the dread as the black ships of the West approach, with the dark plumes of smoke clogging up and polluting the sky and land. It really does put you in the shoes of someone in this time period. I know that I was alive in it, I think I would feel the same as a lot of the characters do. A fear of this new Western influence, and the fear that it would erase my culture and what I love about it. But also some morbid excitement at the new technology and cultural ideas of a completely different land and people. This clash of culture in this time period is what makes Ronin's setting perfect for a video game's conflict, especially for this type of game. We'll learn fairly quickly what side of the fence you fall on. It actually isn't a binary choice like I expected of being anti-Western or pro-Western. There are three distinct factions that are more complex than that. The first is the Sabaku, supporters of the current shogunate who want to keep Japan on the path they're on currently. The second is the Tobaku, an anti-shogunate faction that wants to bring about a new Japan. And though it takes some Western idealistic views of democracy, it's first and foremost focused around an independent Japan where the caste system no longer exists, and everyone is born equal. The final faction is the Obe, essentially the Western colonizers. They want to mold Japan in the Western image, regardless of what Japan has to say about it or not. These factions are not just main story choices, as they will also ultimately change different available allies, characters, and quest lines. Faction systems have always scratched the right gaming itch for me, even whenever they're very artificially gamey or minor. Something about the idea of gaining allies and enemies through my own choices is just so satisfying in the fantasy of a video game. Having a game where you're the scourge of bandits and the ally of paladins, and the next playthrough you're a hated ally of renegades and enemy of nobles. Whatever it is, be it different guilds, countries, or different political factions, I like it a lot. And I think a lot of people do too. In Rise of the Ronin, it was so satisfying for me to raise my relation to places and people that I like. And beyond pre-made quests and moments, there are also random events that allow you to gain reputation, be it saving a peasant from wolves or aiding a pauper on the road who has more to them than meets the eye. Even beyond the base three factions, the game has a heavy emphasis on end characters and companions. In my opinion, they knocked it out of the park. This time period has so many interesting figures who all really existed, and hell, we would have photographs of some of them. It's crazy when we take into account the previous TeamNinja games that were set far before this time period, where few contemporary depictions of the characters exist. And even when they do, they're heavily stylized. It's very interesting to have Ryoma alongside you. I mean, look, this is him. This is a real photograph of him, and I'm buddies with him in a video game. That's crazy, right? It's just so interesting to me. The game has a bond system. I already mentioned the regional and factional ones, but individual characters also have bond levels. This can lead to unique encounters, quests, and even romance, as well as a more basic bonus of improved skills and combat missions. TeamNinja has been slowly adding companions to their games. Wolong especially was heavily based around being able to summon up several companions to aid you. Most of them, historically significant people, as a sort of fantasy wish fulfillment of an alternate history, giving NPCs the ability to give you that co-op-like feel while still being single player. And Rise of the Ronin is similar, but done even better, since you can actually take control of your companions, which makes for some epic moments of carrying a combo over onto 2 or even maybe 3 different people's movesets, each focused around one thing over the other. It's probably something I never knew I needed. A semi-BioWare-esque companion system with this type of Souls-like ARPG gameplay. Everything about the gameplay is satisfying. The parry mechanics, the dodging, the impactful hits, the dismemberment system, and okay, listen, I'm a bit crazy, but I love gore in video games. And it is so satisfying to cut a bandit's arm off or decapitate an American gaijin with a quick slash. And god, the assassinations are very satisfying too, especially when compared to more lackluster feeling assassinations of other similar recent games. While the game does push you towards a sneaky assassin archetype at the beginning, you choose to ignore that and become a straightforward berserker swinging for heavy damage on the front line with a massive sword, or become a focused and calm sword master, destroying your enemy's chi with timed parries and dodges to get critical attacks, and so on. You can even do both with the weapon switching system, and while combat is punishing and there are enemies that are higher level than you can try to take them on with smart and patient gameplay. The weapon variety is a massive bonus to this game. From spears and naginatas, to great swords, to dual-wielding swords, to katanas, to staves, to sabers, to rifles, bayonets, and bows. You can choose to embrace the Western weapons, or stick to the traditional Japanese ones. Or likely, become a mix. A gunslinger with a katana. Fill someone with lead before cutting their head off. Likewise, your grappling hook is also used in combat, to pull yourself to enemies or throw items like barrels, torches, and scattered weapons at them. Makes for some really awesome moments. I've always preferred humanoid enemies in games. I know that it's a common complaint in some games like Dark Souls 2 where there are too many human bosses, but something about two people squaring off against each other has such an allure to me when over slaying monsters or bestial demons. Which is why, even though I really liked Wolong, I was disappointed a couple of times when I got to historical figures that I really liked or was interested in, but fought them as a weird demon animal version instead of actually fighting them, the people I'm interested in. Having this game be based around human-to-human fights and sword fighting, again, was made for me. And within the humanoid enemies, there's a lot of variety, not only in fighting style but also in aesthetic designs. From the muddy bandits to the straw hat Ronin, to the armored up samurai, to the roaming Americans. The Americans as an as an attack-on-sight enemy in some locations is a little funny to me. There's always the fact that they have berserk-like guts great swords. I love it though. There still needs to be some fun, over-the-top, fantastical stuff in this game. And though this is set in history and fairly grounded, there are moments of heightened reality. Be it a ninja suddenly appearing out of a puff of smoke, or just insane bosses' movesets that no mortal could pull off without a rubber spine and being on wires. The fact that enemies can climb too makes pursuit and escape way harder. While I love games with climbing, the amount of enemies that get broken by a small ledge is insane. Ronin fixes that. Try and run away like that and abuse the AI and be surprised when they climb up and clobber you over the head. Parkour and jumping around feel so fluid and good in this game. Certainly better than the modern Assassin's Creed games, that's for sure. I saw some people hating on how it looks to use the grapple hook, but I think it looks fine. Furthermore, it feels amazing. This is a very different form of parkour than Assassin's Creed, and it's surprisingly very unique. Focused around the grapple hook and using your wingsuit almost makes it feel like a Just Cause game mixed with Sekiro more than anything. Leveling up is super fun and satisfying as well, with lots of choices that you can make. Similar to other TeamNinja games or Souls-likes where you lose XP upon death, in this you reclaim that with a vendetta system, which I really enjoyed. It was always very satisfying when you fulfill a vendetta, staying alive for an hour to return and then having leveled up to take them on and win. When you go to this game's equivalent of a bonfire, it converts your karma into skill points. And likewise, if you hit a certain threshold of karma on your person, you trigger a level up. The level ups both handle things like stats and perks, and those you get to choose from are a wide but comprehensible skill tree covering 4 distinct archetypes: strength, dexterity, charm, and intellect. Each of these can be combined and hold various smaller subcategories within them. You also unlock many different fighting styles, from beating certain enemies, leveling up, and becoming allies with people. These change your movesets entirely, meaning that not every katana swings the same way. They can swing depending on your fighting style in completely different movesets and combos. The skills and stats are just one half of the equation though, as your equipment is extremely important. I saw people complaining about the inventory bloat, but I don't think they understand the type of game that this is. Ronin is inherently loot focused like a Diablo or Borderlands game. That's why you start the game with inventory space for thousands of items. And yes, while this may mean you pick up a lot of things you will not use, you can very quickly mark them for deconstruction, for materials to make and upgrade items that you do want to keep, or even to simply sell them. Likewise, finding a really good weapon drop for a weapon that you've never used might make you want to try it out. This happened to me a lot. I hadn't tried the Naginatas and I wasn't very interested in them, but I got a very good one. Used it and ended up loving its moveset. Rise of Ronin is a gorgeous game with an all-around great presentation. I've already mentioned the environmental storytelling and the culture clash of West versus East, but in general the game looks damn fine. You can glean the story from any given area you're currently in, solely by how it looks. The lighting too is dreamy and cinematic, almost hazy in its presentation. Gorgeous, melancholy. Things feel dark and shadowed but simultaneously warm and aware. Walking through a shaded forest, seeing the sun's rays poking through as you notice a bandit beneath a tree just makes for an amazing moment. These moments happen constantly due to the design of the world. The weapons and armor all have unique designs that can be further upgraded and customized. This makes every Ronin look unique and stylish. You want to talk about fashion souls? Let's try this game and Neo out. The armor weapons are all immaculately detailed and a pleasure to look at. And the sheer variety of them is wildly impressive. Asset repetition is rarely encountered in this game, especially when it comes to the weapons and armor. The sound design is a pleasure to listen to. The slashes of weapons against different types of armor feels right. Jumping onto certain surfaces, the deflecting of attacks or blocking of bullets. All of it sounds right too. The shuffle of running, the breathing, the sound of equipment moving, it makes for a completely immersive soundscape. And the music, oh, it's just amazing. It gives me shivers constantly when playing, especially with headphones on. When I learned who the composer was, it made total sense why it was so great. The soundtrack is made by Inon Zur. If you don't recognize that name off the top of your head, let me give you a little portfolio. He did the soundtrack for Dragon Age Origins and 2, Prince of Persia, Baldur's Gate 2, and the before-mentioned PS2 classic Champions of Norath, Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4, Dragon's Dogma, the underrated Lord of the Rings War of the North, and over 100 more. He's a master. This game's score is cinema quality, like you're in a playable samurai film.
あやつを感じておる。いつか巡り合える。我が子、自由に生き、自由に死ぬがいい。
The character creator is wildly impressive. This is a very small detail, and I was amazed that you can make individual hairstyles more unique by choosing different bangs and ponytail types, making hundreds of different combinations. Likewise, you can go down to minute detail, making the hair longer in certain parts, shorter in others, adding every part of the face and body, including body hair and chest size. I see you, TeamNinja. Anyway, we create two characters at the beginning of this game, both unnamed blade twins. You tweak them however you wish, and you play as both in the intro before deciding which one is going to be your main character. Which brings us to the story of Rise of the Ronin. I will not spoil for this video. Usually I tend to recount an entire game story for this channel, but given that Ronin is very new still, and also how long it is, I don't think that that's really the right call or doable. So instead, let me give you the setup of the story, and also how naturally role-playing the world made my character choose his allegiances and beliefs. I'll say explicit spoilers for the first hour of the game, as well as a history setup and lesser spoilers of locations and characters, only going so far as about, I'll say, 8-ish hours into the game. Alright, let's begin. The black ships of the West are coming to Japan, and with them, promises of a change to a nation that feels trapped in limbo. Japan, previously, had ended any trading contact with outsider nations that were not needed. This policy, known as Sakoku, or literally locked country, kept them a single people under a single ruler, several hundred years later in the present mid-1800s. The locked country has remained in place, and likewise its government has maintained a strong grip on the entire country since the dark days of the Sengoku period, where it was constant and total war. Now the country celebrates peace, but not really. The government is an iron fist, and any who dare question the status quo shall be crushed under its fingers. Peasants are items to be used, exchanged, and when necessary, demolished and disposed of. And even the nobility are kept on a fine leash, their families hostage to the one true ruler, the shogun. We are a nameless kid, our family seemingly killed by the shogun's enforcers before we could retain many memories. We and our blade twin, who we were found with at the same time, are now a part of a shadowy organization known as the Veiled Edge, an inherently anti-shogunate faction that wants the shogunate destroyed, but also does not want Western influence in Japan. And as such, as adults, we and our blade twin are tasked with a single mission by the leader of our organization, to kill the American leader on the black ships, Commodore Matthew C. Perry. Sneaking on board, we get very close to him, after killing a dozen or so of his men on the ship, but just as we are about to land the killing stroke, a mysterious man, seemingly Japanese, called the Blue Demon, appeared, saving the Commodore and severing our twin's arm as we fled. Our twin left behind. The Blue Demon we can overhear seeming to mourn for us now that we lack our twin, but we realize rather quickly that our twin must be alive. We can feel it. As the Veiled Edge is destroyed by the shogunate after our failed assassination, our master as well is lost. We run away, alone into the world, with two goals: survive and find our blade twin. While this story predisposes you to be an anti-Shogun and anti-West, you can actually choose to ignore that and be pro-Shogun or pro-West. I personally didn't choose to be a Shogun loyalist, nor a Western ally. My Ronin wandering around was open to finally being out of the nest and seeing the greater world and forming his own opinions. But as he wandered the country and encountered the mass array of bandits, poverty, and unjust officials never caring to protect the common folk, his disgust grew beyond just personal experience. And within him, a fire. It wasn't already enough for his origin, his twin's mutilation, his home's destruction twice over. This was the poverty, the danger, the lack of caring. Perhaps he could understand if the shogunate seemed to try and failed in that try. But one that failed seemingly due to lack of caring and morality, he could not accept. With every region passed, more and more this feeling grew within him. When he reached the first major city, his heart dropped, both in its beauty and its haunting and saddening desolation. The new western buildings shone in the sun, strong, new, and maintained, though polluting all around it. Japanese buildings and castles, meanwhile, crumbled and were left to ruin, turned into poor neighborhoods full of bandits and beggars. Those dressed in old-style Japanese clothing, with few exceptions, seemed to be the poor folk, and those that were in the Western style were notably higher class. To him, this was upsetting. Almost an admittance of an idea that he detested, that there was one right uniform way to everything. It seemed the culture had decided that there was a right way, and that right way was a Western colonizer's idea of progress, but not dynamic progress, no, a forced one, by a nation and people that rather than looking to help, seemed to want to replace. In one of those desolate villages, after saving it from a group of bandits, the Ronin met a man, a handsome and quick-witted fellow who fought with a Western revolver but a Japanese sword. His clothing, too, seemed to be a mixture from all around the world. He seemed to have friends from every corner of society. His name was Sakamoto Ryoma, and as soon as the Ronin met this man, and soon as he got to know him, the answer and solution of Japan became obvious to the Ronin, and Ryoma was to be this model. The culture and technology that the West was offering was not inherently evil. Their motive, arguably, could be described as such, but we can't allow the submission of withdrawing our own culture and morality. In this man, he saw his vision of Japan, not a land of the West, but a land that allowed the positives of the West and other lands too to shape it. A land that did not replace its identity, but instead embraced it and let it evolve. If the ships of the West were better, why not sail them? If the guns are more reliable, why not shoot them? But he decided that though he would allow such progress and such differences to be used, he would not let them change him fundamentally. He resigned himself to this newfound hope and idea of what Japan should be, one that he was lucky that Ryoma shared. Japan must prioritize its people and its evolution, and that prioritizing at this point must mean revolution against both shogun and Western colonialism, but not another era of isolated country. No, one of equal footing, one of trade and open diplomacy, but not outright replacement, and nor continuation of classism and castes, nor allowing the colonization and changes of the West forced upon them. Ryoma and the Ronin needed to enter the city but required passes. After being misled by the people that they aided, they both took on the band's leader, a behemoth of a man, brutish and foul. They fought. Ronin struggled against the band's attacks with his own style, but Ryoma's style seemed countered against this, and they seemed to work in synergy. They felled the bandit. As the man fell, he begged. He groveled, in fact. And the Ronin realized that the first time in his adventure, he would have to make an actual choice, and it would be far from the last one he would have to make. And he decided that this choice must set a precedent, both for himself and what he would stand for, what he wanted from Japan. As he had set himself, he knew that he wanted to change Japan. Even before he was given the mission to assassinate the Commodore, he had now seen the countryside. He knew what life was like, that starvation and ruination was a path some, if not most, were condemned to. This man had devilry in him, certainly. He had done evil acts, and within those acts he had ruined himself. But was the man fully broken, irredeemable, unrepairable? Or was the system? He killed this man, allow no change to occur, no growth, simply just stomp on him like a dying fire and let the ash that was once an alive flame fade and be forgotten. No, that is not what he wanted from people. It's not what he wanted from his ideals. So he spared him. Groveling of the man was pathetic. But within that he saw a truth about him, a last resort, a retreating into a foul and evil creature. But that isn't naturally what people are. It isn't. And only struggle brought him to this, or so the Ronin thought. The Ronin, as he spared the bandit, swore to him that if he ever caught him again on this path, he would kill him, and he meant it. Both the man and the Ronin knew. The Ronin had many times to think this over. Several times, a one-slash could have been all that it took to end him, but still he spared him. This, of course, would bring about change and have ramifications. The Ronin would have to continue on his journey to find those repercussions out, and within them bring even more change. Not just by sparing this simple bandit, but by the precedent that he had now set for himself in his own actions. And so, the pass is taken from the bandits to enter the city, and with a new friend and newfound purpose, Ronin stepped into the city with Ryoma, and they, and many others would bring about change. What would that change be, you ask? You'll just have to play and find out. Rise of the Ronin is a fantastic game. I'll probably need to replay it several more times in the future to see how the other factions pan out. For that matter, also continue exploring this fantastic game world. Though the other factions I didn't align myself with, they had honestly fantastic characters within them, but ultimately some content was cut out, and rightfully so. I think that faction choices should matter and should bar you from certain things. What you get from this game, I think, will depend on your expectations of what it is. At its core, it's an ARPG. While there is a story, it's not the focus. And while it is a rather good story with interesting characters and events, the world and its gameplay and equipment is the main focus, and all of them are very well executed. The story, while it relates to history and is pre-made, I think that the true beauty of it is the sheer allowance that it gives you. The freedom to choose. They could have easily railroaded you into following the historical path, or only being anti-shogunate or anti-Western, but they didn't. TeamNinja makes massive games. This game can fetch you dozens and even hundreds of hours if you want it to. And honestly, I think that per hour of gameplay spent, most of those hours are pretty fun. I don't think there's a single moment that I wasn't actively enjoying the game. Sure, sometimes I felt maybe it's a little bit slower than I would have liked, but I think that's the case with games that are this long in general. If you want a massive game to lose yourself in that's in a gorgeous time period and setting, lots of decisions to make, lots of game systems to play around with, get it. Absolutely. I don't like star ratings, and though I used one in an earlier video, I've decided to no longer use them. I think they're meaningless. If you watch the video, you will know my opinions and will know if it interests you. And as I've already said many times, it feels like it was made for me, and I hope, sincerely, other people feel the same. It's an amazing feeling to feel seen, I suppose, by other artists, by other works. This sort of love for the world and the time period and the culture and the gameplay, it just drips off of the game. It really does. Every part of it feels actually wanted, I suppose. Though there have been some comparisons to the sort of Ubisoft-esque open worlds with just check marks of meaningless tasks to do, I don't think that's the case. Yes, there are things to collect, the cats, the shrines, and other things, but the game feels natural and leading you towards them, at least for me. Perhaps it's just the fact that I'm very willing to deal with the shortcomings because of how much I love the setting and the ideas within it, but I do think that it all just naturally makes a single game. And while some of the mechanics are not as complex as others, and others are a bit more simplified, like the taking of settlements and stuff, I do think that altogether they make a pretty cohesive unit. Thank you for watching. Please let me know what you think of the video. I'd really appreciate it. Comments are my favorite thing to get, and to be honest, are like 99% of the reason why I make these videos. I love hearing people talk about my own videos and opinions and have a discussion. So please, yeah, if you feel like it, please do comment. And if you liked the video, like it. If you like my content and would like seeing more of it, subscribe. If you really, really liked it, please consider checking out my Patreon as well. I'm your resident Eccentric, and I will see you again. Farewell.